Hey, good morning, everyone. Ayin Beis. We finished the paragraph on page 1263, where the Rebbe Rashab explained, as he said at the previous page, Hadugma Mikolze, Yuvan Lamaila, that idea of the very nature and essence of joy, Simcha, what it does to the human being, what it does to our entire psyche and consciousness, that it elevates it and it reaches deeper into the core, allowing us to put it together, which means to pierce, to penetrate, to transcend boundaries and barriers, the regular routines. As I said in the previous class, just think of life without joy. I don't necessarily mean sadness and grief, but a life that you just have, everything is regular. There's nothing negative, but no particular joy. It's hard to imagine. Joy affects so many things, our hope, looking forward to things, our optimism, and our very spirits. So joy is actually a mitzvah in the Torah. Ivdus Hashem b'simcha, like we learned. The joy and the gladness of heart. So in essence, by learning about what the very anatomy and dynamics of joy, we understand a gift that was given to us that allows us to transcend ourselves. That's exactly what Simcha is about. It's not the regular routine. When I say regular, I'm not dismissing it as a gift. The gift of life is a gift of life. But Simcha Sachayim, the joy of life, living a joyous life, being joyous, being happy. And again, joy doesn't only mean standing and dancing and singing. Joy is a full-bodied experience of a certain demeanor that lifts you up. He used the word reimamus isnasus. He used the words going deeper into the core of the soul. But the reason I'm reviewing it is because it's very, Ayin Beis, in general, everything has to be practical. But this section, if you really think about it, is extremely relevant to us every moment of our lives. You see people, you meet them, you just feel uplifted. And other people, God forbid, you meet them, you always feel down. You have to ask yourself, when people meet you, what does it do for them? Most people are not going to tell you, every time I meet you, I feel depressed. But the idea is that we should be people who are exuding, a type of positivity, energy, which we see does lift up ourselves and everyone around us. So bring it back to the bigger picture. What this dogma of all of this is lamaila, that this too is kavyachol, so to speak, by God. There's the regular structure that he defined in detail of Seder Ishtalshlus, the defined parameters, boundaries, and then there's a state of simcha lamaila. We call that simcha halyena. The b'chinas atzmus and so b'yom chasanase, b'yom simcha slibay. Use different verses. Yismach Hashem b'maisov, and other expressions like that tell us that there's an elevated state also above. And where does it express itself? So he gave the example of the king, taken from the Zohar actually, the king in the gate. He's not in his own inner sanctum, which is his usual place, removed beyond, you can't approach him. But here he comes out into the gate, to be seen and be seen, to see and be seen. And that is a state of, when he's in a state of simcha, that's what happens. Comes on to the Chotzer HaMelech, as he says, Shar HaMelech. Yosef Malka Betara, the king sits in the gate. And the details we learned yesterday, that this is like the Moedim L'Simcha, and later he said Shabbos as well. What means Moedim L'Simcha? That it's a time of expansion and expansiveness, that the Malka is Betara, the Gili, and everybody's welcome, everybody can approach the king. And that means that in the Shtalshlus, it means that the Gili is not the regular Gili of the Kav that goes through the gradations of the Etzema Kav, the core power line, the reflection of before it's higher than Atzilus, the reflection of the power line in Atzilus of the Kav, or Shel Tulda, another level downward in Biyah. But now there's a Gili Tisvus Ba'Atzilus B'Biyah Ad Lamata Mata. V'zeu mipnei, and that's because Simcha megala b'chinas ha'pnimis v'atzmus dafke. Because the Simcha reveals this deeper dimension. And that's what God gave us. He created existence, not airtight structure, but this structure has the capacity from time to time to allow in a surge of energy that comes from the pnimius and atzmus all the way back, so-called to the source, and higher than the source of the kav. Like he said, from Keser Malchus, not just of Ein Sof, not just Malchus of Ein Sof, higher than the place where God envisioned and allocated the resources to the structures of existence. So it's from there, higher than that place, and that in turn, Peiretz Geder, basically transcends the Gdarim, the boundaries and the parameters and definitions of existence. And he concluded with what it says about Shabbos in that 6 days of the week, that Chotzer Prima, the gate, the Shara Chotzer Primis, the gate of the inner courtyard is closed. The one that faces east, Kadim Kadmon Shalom, is closed. And on Shabbos and on Yom Tov, it's opened. I recall somewhere that there is a discussion whether it's also Yom Tov, but here the Rebbe Rashab clearly says Shabbos and Moedim. So it's open. And what that means is not just the doors open, it means that allows for revelations and transcendent energies coming from higher states, what he called Kadmon Shalom, meaning from places that are Kadmon before all of existence. And that's what he explained with Simcha here. I do want to add one more thing. I think I wrote it in the group, and I want to thank Yitzchok for it. So the source for these ideas in this paragraph of Ayin Beis, I mentioned Samach to Samach, that he's going to quote at the end of the next paragraph, Tafresh Nun Zayin, Friedrich Rebbe's wedding in 1897. Tafresh Nun Zayin, 5657. The Rebbe had a long mimer called Samach to Samach Rei Mahuvim, where a lot of these ideas we're learning now are there, but the source of it is the Mittler Rebbe's Maimarim on this same verses. It's in Drushe Chasana. The Mittler Rebbe has many volumes, so his discourses that he said at different weddings are all collected there, and many of the ideas are there. As a matter of fact, even some of the expressions, and it's good to look because it helps. There he talks about two different elements of Simcha. Here, the Rebbe Rashab combines them: the Remus Isnasus, the elevated state, and the one that reveals inner secrets. Obviously, they're interdependent, but there he spells them out as actually two different elements. And there's more things that you can learn from that source in case you're looking. It was posted on the group, on the Ayin Beis group. Okay. So with that said, let's continue. So the new paragraph on page 1263, the pages are the paragraph V'hinei nisbar le'il. So now the plot thickens. As I said already in earlier classes, you can rest assured, trust the Rebbe Rashab that he's going to bring it all together with the central theme of Ayin Beis. And of course, the ideas discussed in the previous pages about how we got to here. Because this Simcha was following up after we spoke about Gan Eden. The Gan Eden on its own, the energy, the divine energy. And Gan Eden through Avodah, that's on top of page 1261, the Rebbe Rashab said, the Kushya, that goes back to page 1213, is how can you bring a Gili of Tainug Atzmi into a world that's a lower world like Bria, which is part of the Simcha discussion. But if you recall as well, as I mentioned, this is the big question he's asking in general: how could post-Simsum reality experience a pre-Simsum consciousness? Or how could a post-Parsa, the partition between Atzilus and Bria, and microcosm, it's the same idea. Because remember, Atzilus, the Klolos of macrocosm, is Lifnei Simsum. Bria, the Klolos, is Ak, after the Tzimtzum. So the same question can be asked on microcosm. How could the Bria, the Proteus, the world of Bria in microcosm, have an experience of Atzilus in microcosm? Because there's a parsa that separates them, a partition that changes the paradigm. It's a paradigm shift. So all of this is part of the larger theme of Ayin Beis, especially in volume 2. This was elaborated upon, and really we never finished the answer completely, because he did answer that Tzimtzum has to be transformed, but that's where the whole pasuk v'yadaita ayim v'ashavesa levavecha ki avayu elikim b'shamayim emal v'aretz mitachas ein oid. So all that verse was explained in order to explain this. That we should know that the Tzimtzum and the Gilui come together, and it comes into our hearts. We feel it, experience it, and it's both Das Ali and Das Tach b'Shamayim and Mal v'Aretz B'Tachas Havayu Elikim, as he spoke, the higher Havaya, the lower Havaya, the higher Elikim, lower Elikim. But then Ein Eid is the ultimate final frontier, the final part of the picture. How does the very existence, the very Kalim, the very darkness itself of the Tzimtzum get transformed? So this is all part of a theme that is developing here, that is not mentioned all the time, but now he's going to go back and you'll see he starts connecting it back to those initial themes of transforming the Tzimtzum. But this is all part of it, and Simcha Shal Mitzvah that he's describing is obviously an important component in how we introduce a transcendent element into our existence. Because remember, when you're joyous, you are joyous. You're not escaping reality. In this world, you're celebrating, let's say, your child's chasana or any other joyous occasion. So you're experiencing joy, an elevated state, a transcendent state in existence. So he's going to now talk about this more, and it's continuing to develop. It's going to take time till it all comes together, but that's some of the context, just to put it a little in those terms. And of course, the whole growth of mutfa, murgish, muskel, as we grow through the stages, all the way to the point of b'chol ma'idecha, all-consuming love, will also become part of the picture. So be patient, and Rabbi Rashab is doing it in his masterful way, laying out the pieces. So he says now like this: V'hinei, after explaining what Simcha does in Ishtalshlus, how it elevates it and reveals Atzmus Ein Sof, the core of the Ein Sof that's higher than the Kav, and so on, and that surges into Seder Ishtalshlus all the way Lamata Mata. So he says now like this: V'hinei, and now it was explained earlier, but in the example of Simcha, the kasha Simchi be'etzem hanefesh, hariz gam hagdora tivis. So remember, he made focus, especially in the bottom of page 1261 and 1262, that it doesn't just break through boundaries and transcend; it actually creates a peretz. It also pierces the hagdora, the very definition, and the parameters and boundaries, the natural ones in existence. And we discussed it at length. Like, for example, when he says someone who is stingy during Simcha becomes giving, and other elements of this Peretz Gedus. The Rebbe Rashab is digging now drilling into this point. So we learned that when the Simcha comes from Etzem Nefesh, it's also Hagdara Tivis. In other words, it doesn't just transcend the boundary. It actually changes it. Peretz Gam Hagdara Tivis. Yesh Leimer, and the Rebbe Rashab says, and we can say, Shezeu Inyan Shenizbar Le'il, that this, what is the inyan of this Peretz Hagdara Tivis? In other words, the very like, for example, you could say, okay, right now I was stingy, a person is stingy, and now they're giving. But as we learned, they can go back. They haven't changed their nature. Simcha, so-called, overrode their natural inclinations, and they're very generous for one night or one day. But can you say that Peretz Hagdara Hativis, that person actually, the fundamental nature changed? So he's going to talk about this now. So he says, Yesh Leimer, he's connecting it to what I just referred to, the Maimer Dibra Maskul Vahia Onan Vacheshach V'Yoed. So this is a Maimer, Pesach Maimer, that goes back in volume 2, says page 936. That's where he began the discussion. If you go back to volume 2, how is it possible that post-Tzimtzum we can experience pre-Tzimtzum? That's where he began discussing what is the role of the Tzimtzum. The Rebbe Rashab is now tying together this Simcha, what it does, Peretz Hagdara Tivis, with what we learned there in that Maimer. What does he say? What did we learn there? The La'osid, in the future, Yegile Erein Sof Mamish Lamata. So there he discusses that in the future, after Mashiach comes, the Gili Erein Sof, the divine revelation of the infinite divine light, will be Mamish Lamata. Today it's not. Today the Erein Sof is Behelim here. It exists, but this world is defined by Tachtenim. It's the lowest of worlds. As the Alter Rebbe explains, lowest means in the revelation level. It's the least revelation. But La'asid, it will come down Lamata, V'lo yeh kedover pele klal, and won't even be seen as a wondrous thing. It'll become completely natural. This is completely, this defies nature. This is completely against the nature of something. So he's going to explain more, but let me just frame this in context. So it's one thing to say that there's a special gilui, a certain day, a certain time, that the Eibishter sends a gilui alakus to this world, like we're going to learn in a minute. Matan Torah, different miracles. But that doesn't change the world. That's just like as if you had a special revelation and then the revelation returns. The parameters of existence were not changed. When you say that something, that Gilui Alakus will be in this world, which goes against the very nature of Tachtenim. And let me put it into the context as he said it there, and then we'll read inside. So I'm just giving a preface to what we're going to read. So there's the concept, you've heard the terms, this comes from Ayin Beis, that mimer. The term Elikus b'pshitus, Elimus b'schachus, or Elimus b'pshitus and Elikus b'schachus. I'm going to explain what that means. So there's two perspectives. You can say the world exists, that's a given. We see a world, everybody sees the world. And then that's Elimus b'pshitus, that's a given, pshitus. You don't need proof for it. Everybody experiences, no one's going to question whether the world exists. Except maybe some chassidim, but just naturally. Elikus is bischachus. The novelty is godliness. There you need to work on it. You have to contemplate on it and continue to contemplate and make it part of your own. Because Elikus on its own is bischachus. This is what the Tzimtzum achieved. It basically turned the glove inside out. When we look at a glove, we all know it's a glove to a hand. No one is going to say the glove is more important than the hand. But imagine suddenly everything's turned topsy-turvy. Suddenly people worship the glove and they ignore the hand, or they say, I don't even know if there's a hand. Be like saying, existence exists, but I don't know if there's an invisible hand of God behind existence. Before the Tzimtzum, it was the exact opposite. Elikus b'pshitus. The hand of God, or the consciousness of divine consciousness, was a given. And Elimus was the novelty. So to speak, the glove that he uses, the lavush, the garment. But the Tzimtzum literally created not only a paradigm shift, complete opposite look at everything. That suddenly the eggshell is more important than the egg. The klippa, which was meant to protect the fruit, has now become the main thing, and no one's even looking for the fruit. Some people say there's no fruit. So that's the distinction. The classic story that really captures this well, that debate between a chassid and a non-chassid. Sometimes I use a philosopher and a chassid, and they're arguing arguing God, the existence of God, the proof or not, and the back and forth. This proof, not proof. Yes, proof, not proof. And finally, the chassid gets all frustrated and says to his colleague, he says, I envy you because you think about God all day, and to be honest, I think about myself all day. So the philosopher or the non-chassid went away feeling, oh, wow, what a compliment from this great scholar, this great mystic, this chassid. Until either he grew older and matured, or somebody reminded him that the chassid actually insulted you and you didn't even know it. He was saying, for you, God, for you exist. You don't have to think about yourself because you know you exist. You don't even question that. For you, the question is whether God exists. So that's what you contemplate all day. Does God exist? Does God not exist? Why does he exist? Maybe he exists. What type of God? For the chassid, the opposite is true. God is a given. Elikus b'pshitus. His only question is whether he exists. He doesn't know if he exists. Am I illusion? Am I real? Why am I here? Who put me here? What's the reason that I'm here? So it's a very different perspective. It's not just semantics. It depends what's the given and what's the novelty. So he explained there in that Maimer Vahi Ha'anon, he said that before the Tzimtzum was a completely different consciousness. Everything was godliness. If you brought up anything but godliness, it would be seen as there's no one there, obviously, but I'm saying imaginary scenario, there's nothing else. It's only God. God consciousness, I should say. Eir Ein Sof. That's what the Arizal says. That's why you need a Tzimtzum, because you need to conceal the Eir Ein Sof to allow room for what? for independent consciousness. As long as that divine consciousness dominates, there's no room for anything else. It's like the teacher's brilliance. So the Tzimtzum creates space, but it's more than space. It now allows for another perspective. I exist, and godliness is concealed. Now, this doesn't mean we can't access godliness, and that's the avodah of a person. So therefore, basically, the two realities, pre and post Tzimtzum, are not just two different perspectives. They're opposite perspectives. If you see things from pre-Tzimtzum, through the pre-Tzimtzum lens, you see only God, and everything else is a novelty. When you look post-Tzimtzum, every existence is the given, and godliness is the novelty. So to say that there's a revelation from pre-Tzimtzum once in a while is one thing. But if you say that Gilead and Sof will be Lamata Mamish, you're saying that the whole existence, which is predicated on the Tzimtzum, would not exist without it, is now a different reality. That's a real, as we said, it's not even a pella, means it's a given. So that's, he says, that's opposite of the very nature of existence, which says, I exist and I discover God. We're not saying, Aniva Avsied, I exist and there's no God, even if you have a God in your life, but it's still a God on our terms. That's what he discussed there. And that's why he said, you cannot say, when you say the transformation, when you say that post-Tzimtzum experience is pre-Tzimtzum reality, or consciousness, however you define it, the point is, you can't say that you're bypassing the Tzimtzum or you're overriding it. It has to be taking the Tzimtzum in consideration. So that's why he came to the conclusion there that the only way to go is to transform the Tzimtzum. If you override it, then it's not the natural existence that we know. If you ignore it, it's also not the natural. If you surrender to it, then we are the Teva. How could we experience pre-Tzimtzum in a post-Tzimtzum consciousness or reality? That is not even a pella, that's the ultimate goal. So that's what he asked there, and the answer was that only one way. You know that the Tzimtzum itself was not meant to conceal God, it was only meant to leave room so we can exist, and we can work our way back. And when we transform the Tzimtzum and we see it as a means to an end, and to the point of Ayin Beis, we're going to learn that the Tzimtzum itself is a power of God, then you can be existence post-Tzimtzum and experience pre-Tzimtzum reality. But that takes a lot of avodah, and it takes transforming the Tzimtzum within us, which is the animal soul, and all those concealments, not just to see through them, but ultimately to transform and see that they're all divine. And then you could have the total fusion and of pre-Tzimtzum and post-Tzimtzum, which will be la'asud love. I'm just summing up what he said. We've learned it, but I wanted to sum it up, and he's bringing it now back to the whole discussion here with Simcha, that Simcha goes and is peretz hagdara tivis, which means not just temporarily, but permanently. We're going to learn now inside. So I thought this introduction is necessary, as we're going to see. So he said like this. He says, to say it would be like an example. God made even though the world was all covered in water in the beginning of existence. So it was mayim b'mayim, everything was covered in water. On day 2, God separated the higher waters from the lower waters, the rakia, the firmament from the waters below, and now you have land. Suddenly land appears. Now land and water are antithetical to one another. If water covers land, no one can live on this earth. It's all covered in water. Listen, the sea, the oceans also have a bed. They also have land, but the water covers it. And Hashem said, no, here's going to be a boundary. Remember that. Geder, a real geder. Land, water. It's one of the fundamental boundaries of existence. If there's a tsunami, or God forbid any other such, where water crosses that line, it creates complete catastrophe. That's called a tragedy. Now, if someone would say to you, la'asud lave, the water is going to cover the land, but you'll still be able to live. You'll say, 1 second, how is that possible? That sounds like a miracle to me. That's the similar idea. The whole existence post-Tzimtzum is like land that was allowed to be, and the water has receded. As the Igul HaGodol, the Ein Sof. To say that reality, that pre-Tzimtzum consciousness comes into the space, lamata mata, is mamash hepech hateva. So how is that possible? So earlier we learned because you transformed the Tzimtzum and you realize that Tzimtzum is also part of the whole process. But now he's going to introduce how Simcha comes and helps us understand this even better. So he says like this. So, and it won't be even a pella klal. Again, if it was a pella, you could say, okay, fine. God does a miracle. Allah says, love, the water covers the land, Ein Sof comes down Lamato, and it's a standing miracle. But he says it won't be a pella, it'll be natural. It will be a given. That's Hepechin Tevel Legami. And he explains now. Because it was already the case in history, we already had a scenario, situation, that Gil Ein Sof came down below in this world. Nisim Niglim, like in the revealed miracles, the Yetzias Mitzrayim, when the Jews left Egypt, the Kriyas Yamsuf, and the parting of the sea, the Chaim b'Matan Torah, and so too by Sinai, by Matan Torah. These are all real miracles, things that defied and suspended nature. It's Mitzrayim Kriyas, and it says v'chein v'gam bizman tanoim v'amaroyim. And also the time of our sages, the Tanoim and Amoraim, the Bali Mishnah and the Bali Gemara, Hayunisim Gluyim, Niglim, they were revealed miracles. Like the story in the Gemara where he says, where the Tana was there, and he says to the water, split before me. So you see the idea of miracles like that, similar to Kriyas Yamsuf, but there it was just one body of water. Yeah. And another example, even the smallest of you, even the lesser sages are able to resurrect the dead. So we see that there were certain real nisim gluyim. These were not nisim that were malubish b'teva. They defied nature in a very obvious way. So in other words, we have karhoya le'elamim, Gili Ein Sof, that is higher than nature, suspending nature in this world. Avozeu dvar pella, but that's in the category of a wonder. If you saw someone resurrecting a dead person, or you saw someone parting the sea, or you see the miracles of Mitzvah Mitzrayim, Kriyas Yamsuf, and Matan Torah, you don't say, oh yeah, of course, it's natural. No, parting the sea is a miracle. It's a major miracle. We even call it kosher Kriyas Yamsuf. Even for God, we say it's difficult. Obviously, not God as He manifests in the laws of nature. So it's not something, because we see, for example, in Parsha Noach, after the flood, God made a promise, Lo Yushbeisu, that He will never suspend again nature, the sun and the moon and the day and night, because during the Mabul, Lo Shimsha Mazolis, the Mabul suspended not just the miracle of 40 days of rain, but also the very time itself was suspended. The whole thing about the Mabul was their time that year. So the Eibishter, then he said, Lo Yushbeis, I will never again. So in other words, because this is God's nature, remember, God is not respecting someone else's creation. It's His own creation. He created, for whatever reason, the laws of nature, like we're learning here. Hagdara and Hagbala is not a human man-made thing. It's not like we're limited and God is unlimited. God created limit. The gvul of this world is not our making. Yes, we're bound by it. And God is not bound by it, but He created gvul just like He created bli gvul. But you would call that a dvar pella. If you see any of this, it's called dvar pella. V'hainu shenechshav l'dvar nifla, which means it's considered a wondrous thing, an amazing thing, a completely supernatural thing. Umerumam, l'dvar nifla, I should say umerumam. Nifla means wonder, meruma means like above, transcendent, higher than. You clearly see something uplifted, different than the norm. If you were right now, went outside or wherever you are, you suddenly saw trees flying in the sky, that would be an example. It's completely not in the norm. You'd call that a dvar pella. Is it possible? Of course, God can do that. But that's called a nes, and it's called suspending nature. It's not called nature. Well, l'chein, nikra nes, they say below. It's called nes. Nes comes from the word, nes means also in Hebrew a flag. Orim nisi alaharim. Like it says, shulosh and reimamus. Nes means something that's lifted up higher. Because a nes is a higher state of being. So anything that natural would be so-called subject to the laws of gravity, so to speak, or to the laws of nature, a nes suspends and goes higher than nature. So we call it a nes. The Rebbe speaks about it a lot in the month of Nisan, Nisim, connected to Pesach. Teva is from Tavu b'yamsuf. It's like something submerged in water because teva conceals the divine, and a nes reveals it and elevates everything with it. So that's called a nes. Loshen reimamus. Reimamus means uplifted, exalted, transcendent. I'm just looking for the right words. All these words work. V'chein, he continues. V'chein, begilei alakus b'neshamas pratis. Now he's saying this he spoke about in the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim, Kriyas Yamsuf, Matan Torah. He also covered the time of Tanoim and Amoraim. Now he's saying that we also see this level of Gilei Elokus, Neshamas Pratis, by individuals. Then it was the whole nation of Israel experienced it. So you see it in specific individuals, souls, specific souls, Gam b'deiras achreinim, also in latter and later generations. And also, including, and also in the yedias, the knowledge, and the revelation of the secrets of the inner dimension of Torah that we see in the later generations. Arizal, Baal Shem Tov, Alter Rebbe, Chassidus. He's saying Shekol Zeh. So this all is Gilei Elokus. It's not things are business as usual. It's Gilei Elokus. Even now, in the way that he just described. Shekol Zeh, but however, all of this, hu achshav b'bchinas pella. We all call this a pella. This is not called, again, if things are all regular. We don't see it as the norm. It's considered a wonder, a nes. And then he gives another. He says, the gili that we have by Rashbi, and also Primis Ateri, you say, gal eine, nefilo is b'teira secha. So he only uses the word gal. But basically, that my eyes have revealed the secret. So you see from that it's a chiddush. When you say you're learning Torah and then your eyes are opened up to the deeper secrets of Torah, that itself tells you that open my eyes, meaning I wouldn't see it on my own. So all this is a pella. That can be understood. But there's a bigger issue here. But in the future, we say it won't even be a wonder at all. It's one thing, again, if you say it's a wonder, at least we're recognizing the laws of nature are there. God, whatever reason, at different times in history, or even decides to suspend the laws, so it's a pella. But loss of love, you say it's so natural, it's not even a wonder. V'nigla kved Hashem, he says, ukamoi, rather, like it says, v'nigla kved Hashem, that the glory of God will be revealed. V'ro called, next page, 1264. V'ro called basar, and all flesh will see sheneshames begufim, souls within bodies, yiru gili ere sof mamash. They will literally see the infinite divine light. As the Rebbe emphasizes, it doesn't say ene basar. It says v'ro kol basar, not that the eyes of flesh will see. First, the Rebbe emphasizes, Chassidus emphasizes, it doesn't say the neshama will see. It says the flesh will see, and not the eyes of flesh, the flesh itself. That means that neshamas begufim yiru gili ere sof mamash. And from the posuk, it's clear that it becomes that will be the natural state. It won't be like this exception. V'akol yedu, and everybody will know pnimis haTorah, inner dimension of Torah. It won't just be yechidei gula like Rashbi and Arizal and the Rabbeim and those that learn Chassidus. Everybody will know pnimis haTorah. Shi'alamed Mashiach la'am, that Mashiach will teach the nation. All this will become a new natural paradigm, a new natural state. Add to the extent, Shagam Gili HaNevuah, that also the revelation of prophecy, Yiyeh B'chol Echad Ve'echad. It won't just be exceptions that prophets are prophets. Everyone will be a prophet. U'kamei shekosov v'nivu b'neichem u'b'nei seichem, that your sons and daughters will prophesy. And there are many statements in that regard, but they will all prophesy. Today, in Zman Hazeh, prophets were very unique individuals. Whether it was Moshe Rabbeinu or later Yeshua, and then the Nevi'im, all the Nevi'im that we know, Yeshaya, Yecheskel, Yirmiyahu, all the whole Old Tanakh, that was an exception. Didn't say everybody was prophesying. A prophet was a unique individual. Here it says in the future, everyone will be prophet. In other words, it'll become common, regular. The kol zeh yiyeh k'may inyan tivi mamish. And all this will be literally like a natural thing, Just like today, it's natural to drink water or to do anything that we find natural. All this, that everyone will be prophesying, everyone will know Primus Atera, the souls and bodies will see the glory of God. All this will be natural. Not just that it will be natural. It says clearly, that there'll be the revelation of Ein Sof Mamish Lamata. I mean, if you need a better description of Mashiach's times, it can't get better than this. He's describing actually the beginning of Perek Lamed Zayin and Tanya, where he says that Kol of Yemesa Mashiach and Tchis HaMesim, which is Gili Ein Sof Ve'elam Hazeh. That's what it means. It means divine revelation to the point it becomes natural. Dire b'tachteinim. This is God's home. It's not his hotel. He's not on he's a tourist passing through. This becomes his natural home more than anywhere else. He doesn't say those words here, but the idea is that it becomes completely the nature of existence. The kol haneshama is gam de biyah, and all the souls, also of Bri Yitzir Asiyah, not just Atzilus. Yekablu will receive Gilui B'chinas Atzmus Ein Sof. Will receive the Gilui B'chinas Atzmus Ein Sof. So I mean, I'm looking for the right words. So the whole thing sounds like, one second here. The whole world, all this was revelations that were like miracles. And even that was not common. How many miracles do we see? And suddenly you're saying, L'osid Lavi, the whole thing is transformed, that all this will be natural. I mean, literally like saying that the pre-Tzimtzum reality will be the post-Tzimtzum reality. So earlier we learned, as I said, it's through transforming the Tzimtzum. But now look what he adds. So he says, V'zehu, b'tzad ha-simcha de la'osid, sheyismach havaya b'maisav. That this ability to transcend the boundaries of existence, including the boundaries of biyah, and all things that we call natural, is due to the simcha that will be in the future, the joy in the future that God will celebrate and rejoice, b'maisav, with his maisim, with his creations, with his maisim, is maisim, the world of Asiyah. Sheti asimcha kavyachol, that there'll be kavyachol, so to speak, the joy of God, the b'chinas, not on lower levels, but b'chinas pnimiyas v'atzmus Ein Sof. In the inner and core of Ein Sof, which means all the way pre-tzimtzum, v'hu b'chinas tainug ha'atzmi ba'aveda the neshamas Yisrael. This is the core pleasure, the essential pleasure that God has from the work of the neshamas Yisrael in this world. Sha'simcha azeis, this joy, tishana kol teva seder ha'ishtalshalos, will change, transform the entire nature of the cosmic order. Bi'ikra, I think bi'ikra means either bi'ikra goes le'il or down. Bi'ikra, either it means the whole shtalshalos from its very core, like its core, or bi'ikra primarily sha'amata yeh kamoy hamayla mamish. That the mata, that which is below, will be exactly as it is above. In other words, the gradations we talked about, that the atzmus hakav, the worlds before Atzilus of Ein Sof, the ha'ara, the reflection of the kav in Atzilus, the Shel Tulda, the next lower level of reflection in Biyah, that creates a hierarchy. He's saying now the mata will be like the maila. It will eliminate the hierarchy. So not only will the mata be like Lamaila, it'll also be higher than Lamaila. It's even stronger. It'll even go higher than what was before higher. So Atzilus is higher than Biyah. But if you go, the lowest will become higher even than Atzilus, and even higher than that, Gam Lamaila Mizeh. I have to say, we're being privy here to a tremendous Gili Elokus, just reading the Rebbe Rashab's description of the world in the future. Shekol haneshamas, all the souls, gam haneshamas shein b'bchinas yesh ma'ayin, and also the neshamas that come down yesh ma'ayin, meaning a real yesh, all the way below. He means not the neshamas, the exalted neshamas he spoke about earlier, the neshamas of Rabbi Akiva and those that go on Rabbi Shmuel Kain Gadol, and he mentioned other names. You know, he spoke about Baal Shem Tov and so on. But even the neshamas yesh ma'ayim, meaning they come down, the neshamas that come down, yesh ma'ayim mamish. The gam bislapshusim begufim, and not to leave any room for error. Also, as they manifest in bodies, yiyu kelim legili atzmus ein sof, will be containers for the revelation of atzmus ein sof, the core of ein sof. The zeu, I'm going to read till the end of the paragraph, and then we can all exhale and digest this. The zeu asimcha mitis lamaylo sheyil la'asid, and this is the true joy above that will be in the future. And so too the simcha will be in the souls of Israel. Do you know how many times the Rebbe used that verse at the end of a Fabrengen? The simchas elam al reisham, and the joy, this eternal joy, or this joy of the world, however you try, elam al reisham, will be above their heads, which means they will be consumed, they'll be submerged in this simcha. V'ksiv, another pasuk, negila v'nismecha b'cha, negila nismecha b'ch, b'ch dafke, the ein sof atzmus u'muhus. So when you say negila v'nismecha, means you'll rejoice and celebrate. When you say bach, in you, within you, what is the real within you? Atzmus, dafke ein sof atzmus u'muhus. Sheneshamas begufim, the souls inside bodies, Yismuchu, will rejoice and celebrate b'bchinas simcha atzmius, in a core essential joy b'bchinas atzmus ein sof, the level of atzmus ein sof. And then he concludes v'ayim asher kosav, the parentheses kol zeh, look and delve all of this ba'erech at length, in which maimer b'dibra maskel samach to samach tof reish nun zayin, in the maimer that we're talking about, samach to samach, said by the Friedrich Rebbe's wedding, in the year Reish Nun Zayin, which precedes this by around 20 years. Because we're probably around Ayin Vav, Ayin Zayin, and this is Nun Zayin. So 20 years earlier was the Hemshech Samach to Samach.
The Rebbe Rashab's writes it, right? The Ayin Mashikosov.
Yeah, who else?
I posted that mimer as well. I posted that mimer as well.
There are no other writers here. Everything is the Rebbe Rashab. Okay. So we conclude this paragraph. I think it speaks for itself. I don't know. I reading this feel this is like real a description from a Rebbe of the transformation that will happen la'asid love. And so he's now connecting the transformation of the tzimtzum, which allows post and pre-tzimtzum to connect with simcha. So simcha is what causes this type of ability to transcend and elevate everything in this level, and it's clearly in a permanent way, to the point it becomes natural. So I have a few questions myself of understanding this, but I think it's right now wise and healthy first to just absorb what we just read and take it in, and then we can always analyze and discuss it. But it's open for questions. I have some things I want to review myself, but I want to what's called wallow. What's the word? Regale, not regale. I want to
bask
even more. What's it called? Indulge.
Revel.
This,
revel.
Yeah, all of that. Yeah. Indulge in this gilui before I start using my mind to try to understand. There's a lot of hergish here and a lot of like a certain sense of you almost need like an intuition and a sense of what's going on. It's not just words. So I hope you do the same. Understand this is more than just a mathematical formula of what will happen. It's actually a very different divine, a whole different level of consciousness that will transform all of us to the point that it won't even be a Pella. That's the biggest Pella of all. Okay, but as I said, I'm happy to clarify anything. I'm just telling you where my state of mind is right now. I'm really feel like gazing at the Metzach, gazing at these higher levels and trying to be absorbed in them, in the beauty of it, instead of trying to be a journalist that's going to comment and analyze it. So I'm just telling you my state of mind and heart right now. Yeah, that was beautiful. That's unbelievable. You could also get a little sense. The Rebbe says we're on the threshold of the Geula, and you think that after all the thousands of years of work that we did, that we're ready to enter such a state. So I think it also gives you a good sense of what we need to do. We need to have a taste of this. The more you learn Chassidus, and especially Maimorim like this, you start getting a taste of a different type of reality. So even if we're not there yet, at least at least have somewhat of a description. So it's better than just completely being in the blind and the dark. Like it brings me to mind that Tzemach Tzedek, what he said when they asked his Chassidim, asked him about why he talks so much about Mashiach, even though compared to the Rebbe spoke a lot more, but the same idea. And his response was, said, it's because of the aha. That's what he said. And later they asked the Rebbe, what do you mean by the aha? So he said, imagine two people having a conversation in a closed room, and someone standing on the other side of the wall, he's listening in, but he can't hear everything. So he hears every fifth word. So he doesn't really understand what they're saying, just words, random words. Then when they come out of the room, or he enters the room, and they share with him what they spoke about, he says, aha, now I understand what you were talking about. Because he did pick up words here and there, but he didn't have the glue and the whole context and the whole narrative. So Tzemach Tzedek says, when we talk about Mashiach now, the more we do so, we'll have the aha. So when it happens, it won't be complete foreign idea. It'll be, oh, now I understand what I read here, what I heard there, and I experienced here and there. In other words, it'll all come together, like when you get a little picture, then you see the whole picture. So I think this helps us. This can be explained in plain English. It gives us a taste that allows us to have that aha, and sooner rather than later. Yeah.
We know how much the Rebbe demanded Simcha in an unusual way.
Yeah, very good, exactly. And I remember the later sikhs, where he said that we tried everything, and maybe Eina Dover Toli Ela B'Simcha. Now you understand it much deeper, what the Rebbe meant. It wasn't just, let's us celebrate. Simcha is a tool and a resource that helps us experience loss and love. It helps us experience a higher paradigm. That's gewaldic. That's good, excellent. So in other words, when we tell people, be b'simcha, we're saying really, get out of your locked place and allow yourself to experience something greater and higher. And simcha alone does that. Yeah.
The Rebbe even made the concept of Simcha b'taharoso. He said generations before it was Simcha shel mitzvah. Now it's Simcha, Pashat Simcha.
Yeah, it all fits right in here. Yeah, I agree. This is quite a piece, I must say. Wow. As Chassidim go, my view would be, this is when you say L'chaim, you sing some songs, and you fabreng instead of becoming too scientific and analyzing it. I'm just saying my feeling. So I say L'chaim to all of you.
L'chaim v'livracha.
No, I really feel that way. When you learn something like that, that's what you're supposed to do next. There'll be time to analyze. Trust me. By the way, I'm not trying to silence anyone. Feel free to ask, and I'll try to explain whatever needs to be explained. I'm just telling you I'm sharing my own exuberance. That's all. Yeah. What a piece. Any thoughts, feelings, sentiments? Anybody wants to say something? Doesn't have to be a question. You could also comment. I'm still fascinated to understand the Simcha transformation. Wow. You see, there's a line they say, I don't know the name of who. Someone said to, maybe it was a Nochem Chernobler, I'm not sure. They asked him, how can I be joyous when everything is not working in my life? So there's Nachman Chernobyl said to him, or whoever said to him, he said to him, if you were joyous, everything would be good in your life. In other words, we always begin with being a victim of circumstances and then saying, okay, how can I be b'simcha? Look what's going on. And the point is, the mitzvah is get out of that, so then you'll elevate yourself. So in other words, simcha as a mitzvah, as a more than just, okay, because something is good, that's why you celebrate. No, celebration is itself experiencing higher states of consciousness, bottom line. That's what simcha is. Simcha is a higher state of consciousness that's higher than the regular normal structures. And that in turn, when you can bring yourself there, so simcha is both a cause and an effect in that sense. It can lift you there, and in turn, it breaks through more barriers. So it's like when the Rabbeim say, Tach gut v'zayin gut, or Bi b'simcha, the Rebbe was saying, I'm giving you koyach to break through whatever it is that's going on, and that itself will solve your problems. But we get stuck in our problems and we can't allow ourselves to go there. So it's like really, there was someone once by the Rebbe in Chassidus, he had difficulty walking. He was developing Parkinson's, he had difficulty walking. So he asked the Rebbe for a bracha. So the Rebbe said, walk over to me, to my desk. And he tried, he couldn't. He was working. The Rebbe said to him, I said to you, walk over to my desk. Unfortunately, he never made it to the desk. But what the Rebbe was not being compassionate. He didn't understand that this man has difficulty walking. The Rebbe was trying to evoke, as a Rebbe, trying to say to him, you have the koiches. We need to go dig deeper. And if you could do that, you'll be able to walk. Now, some of us can do it, some not. I'm not criticizing this individual. I'm just saying what the Rebbe's approach was, was exactly that. So some people thought the Rebbe was not being sensitive when someone said, no, you're saying this is the way. I want you to become greater than you are. Yes, I could come down to your level and give you a bracha, and you'll stay where you are and you'll grow slowly. I'm trying to lift you up. And Simcha does that, as well as just in general, the positive thinking of Trach Gut, even though he's talking here more Simcha and so on. There's that final thing I want to say was the night of the Fried Alter Rebbe's Yahrzeit is passing, was Motzei Shabbos. Chavdala Tevis, Tov Kuf Ayin Gimel. So he was in Kfar Piena. They were running from Napoleon. It was during the war. And Alter Rebbe his health deteriorated and ended up being that Shabbos, would be his last Shabbos. Tzemach Tzedek, the Mittler Rebbe was not with him. The Tzemach Tzedek was. So that night, after Shabbos, Tzemach Tzedek davened Ma'ariv for the Amid. He was the Chazan. But he saw his grandfather, the Alter Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe of all people, the Rabbeinu HaGadol. He saw that he was not well, so he couldn't daven with, he was very sad, and you could hear it in his voice. Then the Alter Rebbe called him over. There's a letter from the Tzemach Tzedek. It's an amazing letter. I use it a lot in my life and in general. It's a great, the Alter Rebbe called him over, and the Tzemach Tzedek writes, the Alter Rebbe, my grandfather told it to me in a way that was like gentle, but he was basically reprimanding me. He said, I heard from my Rebbe, the Magid. It's interesting, he invoked his own Rebbe. That, what's the Lashon? Kemara pnei Adam l'mayla, by the Merkava. So the expression is that the reflection of the face as it is above. So he says, the taich is that the face you show to heaven is the face you get in return. Like kamayim aponim leponim. If you show a sad face, you get a sad face in return. If you show a joyous, a simchadika face, then you get a simchadika face in return. He basically was telling the Tzemach Tzedek that I heard how you davened, but you have to always have that simcha face. Now, the Alter Rebbe then made Havdalah, and it says he passed away around 1029 that night after Havdalah. And this may be the last thing the Alter Rebbe ever said in this physical world. It's a tremendous letter from the Tzemach Tzedek. It's printed in his Igres, and he writes how attitudes change reality. He gives examples for it, that actually the way you think changes the way even the neuron, he doesn't say neurons, but the way the neurons are fired, that's how they get wired. And when your attitude changes, your reality changes. And that's what the Alter Rebbe was essentially telling him. So it's a very fascinating letter. But I'm reading all this. You feel a sense that it's a whole different take on Simcha. It's not just, okay, celebrate, you're happy, God gave you a mitzvah, so be b'simcha. Simcha is the greatest gift of allowing you to go beyond yourself and beyond what you think you're capable of and your own boundaries. That's really what it comes down to. And that's what Simcha creates. So sometimes a Simcha is created for us, like the Simcha of your child's wedding, or your own Simcha, or other examples. The Mittler Rebbe gives several examples of different Simchas. Your own wedding, your child's wedding, and so on. But then there's times that you don't have an excuse, so to speak. You don't have a reason, but there's still the mitzvah of Simcha. He doesn't talk about it here yet. I'm just pointing it out. So that just some thoughts on this theme and context. I hope everybody's a little happier today than they were before this. It's somewhat uplifting to hear all this Simcha. Yeah.
L'chaim, Rabbi Jacobson. Baruch atah Merchalam Shakol Niyavi V'ro.
Okay, finally someone has something to drink. I didn't prepare. I have a table only with my table only has from L'chaim to you, L'chaim L'vracha. Everyone should be healthy and well.
Benedictine.
Amen.
Yeah, it's called the drink of kings, the drink of Malchus.
I thought it was called Mashka Mukusher.
Yeah, that's correct. So may these words actually implement. Everybody should have a uplifted the reality forever, and health-wise, and brachas, and children, and nachas, and your own nachas, and fulfilling our main thing, our shlichus in this world, and finally bringing the natural state of joy, and that will be so natural we won't even see it as a wonder. Yeah.
Amen.
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 So before we conclude, someone wants to say something? Anybody?
Yeah,
I wanted to go ahead. Go ahead, Rabbi.
No,
I want to just be the last one.
You're in the West Coast. Go ahead.
No, mine is a housekeeping item. So go ahead. Let's go ahead. Let's
Yeah, he's going to make an announcement for all of us. Yeah, go ahead, Eliezer. Go for it.
A couple things. As you said, that was dramatic. I don't know if you're going to include that in the conclusion of the Gula and Mashiach curriculum, but you might want
absolutely. It'll be, every line will be saturated with this. Trust me.
That idea. But what I found interesting or noted was that it says there that, I don't have it right in front of me, I go to the page, but it said there, I was looking at it, but it says there that Hashem, Yismach Hashem b'masav, that he will rejoice, he will be b'simcha in our avoda. And that simcha, it seems to Kiviyachol that it said there, that will cause us to be b'simcha, meaning that first we should bring simcha to God, and then he'll, through our avoda, and then he'll rain down upon us, so to speak, or reveal simcha to us. What was that connection? Why is it he bring the God will have simcha rather than, I would think that the whole idea is our avoda is simcha, and that will bring simcha to God. Is that how is that?
Both ways. It goes both ways. Here, he didn't spell it out really yet in specific. I think he will, but it really goes both ways. Our avodah b'simcha causes simcha above, and our very avodah itself causes simcha, even when we're not b'simcha.
That's what I was.
Yeah, but both are true. We also have a mitzvah to be b'simcha, so you can imagine our simcha causes even more simcha. There's no limit in that. He doesn't really. I mean, I have to read it over. I didn't see that distinction yet, but clearly it's a combination of both. He just, right now, he spoke more what simcha does to us and what simcha does l'mayla. Now, la'asid love, he didn't say yet that is our avodah, but it's clearly, we don't get to Mashiach without our avodah. So it's clear that our avodah is part of this. But let's see, I would wait and see how he continues. He's going to talk more about this. I believe it's going to come up.
Maybe that point about simcha b'taraso, as Rabbi Taitel mentioned, the mitzvah that when the Rebbe said that, maybe what's necessary to bring the gula is simcha b'taraso. Just simcha, to be in that state of simcha is sort of to be in the state of lasid lavo, and that by being that, because in Galus we have so many reasons not to be the simcha, right? I mean, that's what you're talking about, Peshitas and Hischadshus. Peshitas, there's so many reasons to not be the simcha. because of all the trials and tribulations of Gullus. But if we can, our vote of even with those Hester Panim, we could be Simcha Batarosa, just elevate ourselves to that level, then maybe that will help convert and transform the Tzimtzum into and reveal the Simcha there.
I would, the topic isn't over, so
okay,
there'll be a lot more said, but yeah. We all have that on our mind. He just didn't spell it out because right now it looks like he wants to first just explain the state of Simcha. Then we'll get into how we get there, like that maybe. Okay, so before we conclude, I already mentioned this, but our dear friend Yitzchak will announce it formally. So go for it. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Rabbi Jacobson. Well, it's a perfect, auspicious moment to make this announcement, so we can have a chazaka. Chevra, as you know, Rabbi Jacobson's organization, the Meaningful Life Center, will be launching its first online fundraising campaign on Hanukkah to help expand their amazing educational programs in Torah and Chassidus, from which, as you see here, we all benefit greatly. And this effort by Rabbi Jacobson and his organization includes us, his Ayin Beis class, which is made possible by his Meaningful Life Center and the Chassidus Applied track in particular. He couldn't be teaching this to us without the resources of the Meaningful Life Center. It's all one geschäft. So I have volunteered to lead an Ayin Beis fundraising team to create a pushka, so to speak, of initial donations to be used as matching donations for the main campaign. This means that making a donation in our group before the public campaign, which starts on Hanukkah. This means making a donation now. And the purpose of matching, as you might imagine, is to encourage others that if they give, then their donation will be matched. So it helps catapult the fundraising campaign to have matching donations. And so Rabbi Jacobson has asked his closest supporters, which includes us, to help create a basis of matching funds so that when the campaign goes live, then the public donations can be multiplied and people will be more encouraged to give. If this Ayin Beis class and other Rabbi Jacobson programs, Meaningful Life Center programs, have enriched your life in Avodas Hashem, as it has for me, this is a great time to give back something to show your appreciation and support. As an incentive to encourage you to donate now, there's a member of our Ayin Beis group that has pledged to match your donation within the matching campaign, up to a total of $5,000, so that our group, our Ayin Beis group, can raise $10,000. That means to say there's a matching within a matching here. So anything you give will be matched by someone in our Ayin Beis group up to $5,000, so that we can raise $10,000. As the Chag of Urim is soon upon us, please donate now using the link that I have shared now in the Ayin Beis WhatsApp group thread to help spread the light of Torah and Chassidus to the whole world. This is an important note. Please type Ayin Beis, however you spell it, AYINBEIS or BAIS, however you like it, in the notation under the amount of your donation, so that your donation can receive the double matching. When the actual public campaign launches, the notation is to tell Rabbi Jacobson's staff to aggregate these specific Ayin Beis donations into our team, and our team total will be shown when the main public campaign is launched. Your tzedakah will surely be acknowledged by Rabbi Jacobson's organization, and even more importantly, by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Thank you all, and Hatzlacha Rabbah, and Tizkul Mitzvos.
Thank you, Yitzchak. It was very well said. Couldn't say it better myself. Obviously, I second it all. I appreciate it all. I will tell you that the people have been responding, this is all pre-campaign, but Yitzchak, really appreciate your support and your encouraging others. And maybe this was the highest point of, this was not planned. The section we just learned is quite, quite something. I think also
come on, admit it. You planned it that way. Come on, admit it.
Okay, you know what? God definitely planned it. I just went along for the ride. Yeah, and tzedakah and simcha actually go hand in hand because both of them are pushing our limits and going beyond ourselves. Just interesting note. Okay.
Yitzhak, for Simcha, I pledge $1,000.
Baruch Hashem.
wow.
Baruch
Wow.
Hashem.
Thank you.
Well,
Eliezer.
so you
Wow,
just
that's
turned.
something. Thank you. Thank you. We may have to up the goal. Yeah.
Shkar.
If we do it now, on me also.
Okay.
Leonardo.
Click, put your words into action, and I just posted this in the Ayin Beis group. Click on the link and make the donation, and in the notation field, write Ayin Beis, and that will get allocated to our team.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
good. We just raised $4,000. 2 + 2.
Wow. And if anybody needs any help or questions, a very good team involved, thank God. And thank you again, everybody. So let me